And good, bright, and beautiful morning. Here we are this morning on Easy Bible Study. We are stepping into Genesis chapter 21, and he's finally here. And I don't know why I spelled the word here, Hear. That was a typo. I'm going to have to go fix that. But he's finally here, and apparently I am still laughing. So, what are we talking about? Well, we are talking about the promise of God. And we are so excited. I am so excited to share this with you today. So let's get into this. And I'll be right back as soon as I fix this. He finally here. Save. Done. We're good. I'll be right back after this. Ugh. I guess I'm just going to do a lot of laughing today. And welcome back. If you do find any value in this content today, and I think you're going to probably laugh a lot because I have a feeling it's just going to be one of those days where, yeah, maybe the buttons just don't quite work like they're supposed to, or we're going to fiddle with some new stuff. So, you know what? Anytime you do something new, it never goes quite right. But if you find value in this content today, do me a favor, click like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any of my content, and share. Because when we share God's word, it is always beneficial to the world, not just to us, not just to my channel. And I suggest this with other YouTubers as well. I don't suggest this just with my channel, just to build me. It is very much a philosophy about building the Christian community online and showing God's word for what it is and for being part of that. So definitely share God's word and share my channel, share this video, share a short, whatever one you see. All right, so we today are in Genesis chapter 21, and he is here. He's finally here. And it feels very abrupt because for verses and verses and chapters, and we've been talking about this since, oh my goodness, let me see. We have been talking about this since chapter 12 of Genesis. So this is an event that we have been talking about, where God moved him. Let's see here. Yeah. Genesis chapter 12, verse 2, and I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And he goes, I'm going to make you great. And that was in chapter 12. And then it takes us all the way before we get chapter 21. So 9 chapters later before we see the result of this. But we now are in the result. So let us get started. I'm actually going to do a different video here. And we're going to get started with this, and we're going to get the Bible reading in. So, first things first, we're going to do that. And here we go. All right. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born unto him. And Sarah said, God made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. And the thing was very grievous in Abraham's sight because of his son. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the lad, because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. And also of the son of the bondwoman will I make a nation, because he is thy seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. And she went and sat her down over against a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, Let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him, and lifted up her voice, and wept. And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, Fear not. And said unto her, What aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thine hand, for I will make him a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water, and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness, and became an archer. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So, here we are. Whoops, let's take this off. Goodness, there we go. Oh, goodness. All sorts of things we need to take off. I told you it was going to be a wild day. All right. Yeah, so there we go. We've got two actual kind of stories, but they are related to each other. So first of all, he's here. Isaac is finally here. And what you need to remember from earlier, when we didn't know his name was going to be Isaac until later on, but we knew that God said, I promise you a son from Sarah. I promise you a son from Sarah. It's absolutely going to happen. And the Lord visited Sarah. So here we are in Genesis 21, and Isaac has finally arrived. And how old were they? Yeah, well, Isaac was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born. Now, this also means that Ishmael, which we're going to talk about in a minute here, was 14 years old at this point. Because if you remember, when he was promised this, and when they did the circumcision, when they circumcised, hold on a second. Which was back in chapter 17. And all the men of the house, and the selfsame day, Abraham circumcised and Ishmael his son. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh. So he was 13 the year before. So now Ishmael is 14 years old. And we will reference that in a bit here. So we've got the Lord visited Sarah. So here we go. Verses 1 through 2. And it says, Sarah finally got pregnant and had the promised son. And it is very interesting that they named him Isaac, although this was already something that had been predetermined. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac, being 8 days old, as God had commanded him. So, first of all, verse 3, his name is Isaac, which I think this is really ironic, because the name Isaac means laughter. The name Isaac means laughter, which is so fitting, because it was laughable that Sarah at her old age was even going to have a son, that Abraham at the age of 99 was able to get his wife pregnant and have a son. And maybe it was at age 100, because he was 100 when Isaac was born. So he may have been 100 years old by the time he by the time she conceived. Because it says he was. And so then verse 4, Isaac is circumcised. At 8 days. And this is where the Jewish tradition of having a bris and doing that at 8 days old comes from. So circumcisions, if you are in Judaism, are done in a ceremonial way. They are not done in the hospital. The vast majority of Christian babies, and most Christians do circumcise their children. It's not required, but most do, for health reasons, for other reasons. And we're not going to go into that too much because you get to choose your own beliefs on that. But the vast majority of Christians, in the Christian tradition following Judaism, do have their babies circumcised, male babies circumcised. However, that is done at the hospital usually before the baby comes home. Whereas in Judaism, it is done at 8 days. It is a ceremonial thing. It is called a bris. It's actually a whole party thing. It's a whole thing. So look it up if you're interested. But that tradition comes from here because previously they hadn't been circumcising and they hadn't circumcised. I mean, Ishmael was circumcised when he was 13. Abraham was 99 years old. So, they were not babies when this happened, and all of his household were circumcised as well. But now we see the first baby born after the covenant, after the circumcision, which was the evidence of the covenant. And that's the other thing you need to remember, is that the circumcision is a ritual ceremony that solidifies that covenant between God and Israel, or between God and Abraham as what will become Israel. And so Isaac is circumcised at 8 days old, and this is where this is where that covenant is seen, and why that tradition does that at 8 days in Judaism, even today. And he circumcised him, and here we are on to verse 5. And Abraham was 100 years old. Verse 5. Abraham was 100. And I want to try and see if I can find how old Sarah was, because I feel like I feel like we found out how old they were each, and I can't remember where we knew this. I feel like she's like, I feel very much like Sarah is like 90 or something. So I'm going back to see if I can find a point where we see both of their ages. But Sarah was definitely very old. In fact, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat a little bit, because I am sure that it's there, and I am sure somebody else has probably looked it up before. So, how old was Sarah when Isaac was born? We're going to Google it, because I am sure it's there. I was right. She was 90 years old. Okay? Abraham was 100. Sarah was 90. 90 years old, having a baby. Can you imagine? It's not just the having of the baby either. Think about the fact you're 90 years old. Now, my mother-in-law is 90 years old. I can't even imagine her having the energy, not only just to push out a baby, but to even take care of a baby. She struggles to take care of herself. Some days, not every day, but some days some days she's just like tired all the time, and she just goes and lays down. And so Sarah is 90. That's just incredible. And Sarah said, God hath made me to laugh, so that all that hear will laugh with me. So this is where we find in verses 6 and 7. And she said, who would have said unto Abraham that Sarah should have given children suck? For I have borne him a son in his old age. This is Sarah's commentary. Sarah's commentary is that the whole situation is ridiculous. Is unbelievable is actually probably a better, like, who would have ever thunk it, as they say, is unbelievable And that makes her and everyone laugh. And this is why the name Isaac means laughter. Because, first of all, Sarah laughed. It was unbelievable when the men were in the tent and she was in the other tent and in the doorway. And she laughed in her head at what they said because she was like, that's crazy. It's laughable. It sounds crazy. There's no way this should happen. And so it's just completely laughable. And so that's why the name Isaac means laughter. Now we're going to carry on here because we could have separated this out, but I just didn't want to do just that short passage today. The next section we see here is verse 8, and it says, and the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. Okay? So in verse 8, means now the child is probably like 2 years old. All right, so remember, Ishmael was 14 when he was born. Now the child is weaned, which means he's probably about 2. Isaac is weaned. And they throw him a party. Probably around 2 years old. May have been even a year old. Actually, you know what? It could be a year-old party. There's lots of babies that are weaned around 1 year. But somewhere in that 1 to 2 years old range. All right? So probably around 1 to 2 years old is what we're going to say. Somewhere in that range that he's weaned. This means that Ishmael, and this is an important thing to keep in mind. This means that Ishmael is 15 or 16 years old. Okay? Because he was 13 when he was circumcised. He was 14 when Isaac was born. He's now 15 or 16 years old when Isaac is weaned. Somewhere in that 15 to 16 year old. And this is what's important because here we go in verse 9. This is why it's important. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. Okay? And what this implies here is that he was mocking, that he was taunting. So 67:11 is the actual number. So I'm going to go to our lexicon here. 67:11. I don't think it's the deep underline, but I'm going to make sure. Yep, it's not. It's the definitionals. So when it says mocking, let's take a look at what that means. All right. So 67:11, when it says he was mocking, the downside to this is I wish this was a searchable thing. It would be much faster. Oh, that was 3 and I thought it was 8. Oh, goodness, I need new glasses. 67. 62, 63, 66, 67:11. All right, this means... All right, so it says to laugh outright or in their face, to laugh, to mock, to play, and make sport. Now, what she's saying here is that so Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham, mocking. All right, so we don't actually even know if Ishmael was doing anything wrong here. We don't know if he was mocking Isaac, if he was playing, and all of a sudden Sarah became very aware of the fact that Ishmael was the firstborn son. Even though not the firstborn son of her, Ishmael is the firstborn son. So we're not entirely sure if he was mocking Isaac, if he was just playing, if he was just making sport, if he was laughing, or it does seem to imply, though, by the tone of mocking here, and by the verb tense that's used, that it's a very good chance that he was taunting. And so, she says, wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman. So Sarah, in verse 9, Sarah sees Ishmael taunting, and it's very likely Isaac. And it implies, the passage implies that it is due to the fact that, yeah, that's fine. Ooh, look at you, Isaac. You got a big party because now you are weaned. Well, guess what? I'm the firstborn. It has the implication of that type of an idea where Ishmael is like, yeah, that's fine, but I know. Like, I know what's really happening. And so, in verse 10, and actually I'm just going to combine 9 and 10 on here with a different line, and say, so she tells Abraham to cast them out. So she tells Abraham to cast them out. She's like, I don't want this kid around. He's not the heir. My son is the heir. And this kid has got attitude issues. I don't want him anywhere around Isaac. He's gone. Now, keep in mind, the term is going to be used in the minute here. It's going to be using the word child. So there's a lot of people who are like, oh, they weren't, in the Bible, people got married really young. And so then they were no longer children and this and that, except for that Isaac or Ishmael here is 15 or 16 years old, and he is still referred to as a child in the next section. So this idea that teenagers are a new thing, or that being a teenager, or that this idea of extended adolescence is not something in the Bible, well, we see that Ishmael is actually 15 to 16 years old, but he's referred to as if he is a child in this passage. So not a lot of, how do I say this? Not a lot of truth to the idea that that he was somehow separate, that he was somehow not that. So that he was somehow a grown adult, and that he was an adult because he's 15, 16 years old. He's not an adult. And God said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous in that sight. So basically, this upsets Abraham. The idea of casting him out. This upsets Abraham because he's like, he's still my son. He is still my son. This is upsetting to me. I'm bothered by this. And so this upsets Abraham, but God says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I got this. He's like, he goes, I'm going to make a nation. Don't worry about it. He's going to be a nation too. Like, he's like, don't worry about Ishmael. I'm going to take care of him, and I'm going to make him a nation because he is your seed. And I did promise that I was going to expand your seed. So he is your seed. He is from your lineage. Even though he's not with Sarah, even though he's not the promised son, he's not where I'm establishing my covenant, I still promise you I'm going to make a good big nation out of him. So he does. So he says this. So then Abraham gets up in the morning. So Abraham casts them out. Abraham gives them food and water and sends them away. And sends them away. That's verse 14. And the water was spent in the bottle, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs. So, and sends them away. So that's verse 14. And then in verse 15, Hagar is like, she's like, Hagar gives up. Hagar's like, this isn't going to work. Hagar says, we ran out of water. So when Hagar runs out of water, she goes to lay down and die. And she leaves Ishmael where she can't see him. So it says, and she went and sat her down, and the water was spent, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat her down over against him, a good way off, as it were a bow shot. For she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him and lifted up her voice and wept. And she cries. Okay? So this is verses 15 through 16. And now 17, and God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called to Hagar out of heaven, and said unto her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up the lad, and hold him in thy hand, for I will make him a great nation. So, in verse 17, God heard their cries. This is verse 17 and 18. And promises to protect them. Verse 19. God gives them a well. With water. And verse 20. Ishmael becomes a skilled archer. I should say verse 20 and 21. Who married an Egyptian, which is just like his mom. If you remember, Hagar was an Egyptian. Becomes a skilled archer who married an Egyptian and lived in the wilderness. And there we have it. We have the ending of that story where Isaac arrives, and after a year or two, Ishmael's getting a little bit full of himself, and Sarah's like, nope, you're out of here. Abraham doesn't want to. God says, it's okay. It's time for them to go. Don't worry, I'll take care of Ishmael. I'm going to make a great nation out of him. And Ishmael became a skilled archer, marries an Egyptian woman, and obviously it's almost like it's an implied that says, and lived happily ever after. So we kind of sum up the story of Ishmael here as well. Tomorrow we are going to be back in. So look, this whole situation seems laughable. That Sarah would have a baby at 90, that Abraham would have his son at 100, that Ishmael would be forced out of the house, that he would then become a great nation, that he would become a strong archer, and that God would actually rescue him and Hagar, and that God would protect them. It's why we will talk a little bit more about who Ishmael is and what nation he founded later on. But yeah, God says, I'll make a great nation out of Ishmael. Don't worry about it. He protects him. He defends him. And he ends up marrying someone just like his mama. He marries an Egyptian as well. His mom goes and gets him a wife out of Egypt, which is where she came from. So he marries an Egyptian wife as it is. And hopefully, teaches her about God as well, because Ishmael did know about God, obviously, from Abraham. So from his real father. Thursday, we'll get back into this. Tomorrow, of course, we're going to continue in our series on the names of God. I'm not going to give you a preview on that. You'll find out tomorrow when you get here. But I look forward to seeing you then. And bye for now.